To those of you who have joined us so far, we're going to give it another minute or so to let some more people join us. And while we let more people enter the room with us, I'm going to just start with a little housekeeping. First of all, thank you for being here this afternoon. The structure of this event will first be introductions, then a conversation with John Herbst, and lastly, we'll have time to take any questions or comments you might have. If you have any technical difficulties, feel free to write your concern in the chat box and I'll assist you there. You can also press the raise hand button to be unmuted to make your comment or question. You could also write your questions or comments in the chat or Q&A, and I will ask them for you at the appropriate time. Okay, let me start with introducing you all to our author this afternoon, John Herbst. John was born and raised in northern Colorado. As a child, he spent many hours enjoying the small town atmosphere of Greeley. He lived for the outdoors, riding his bike to the fields of sagebrush, the wetlands of grasses and cottonwood trees, the Seeley's Lake. John's spiritual place is in the majestic Rocky Mountains, where he thrives at altitudes from 8,000 to 14,000 feet. John lived many years in Big Thompson Canyon in towns of Drake, Glenhaven, and Estes Park. He became an avid hiker, camper, and backpacker. His love is snowshoeing and at one time cross-country skiing. In 1990, John became serious about climbing the Colorado 14ers, climbing frequently until 2006. In 2006, John moved to the Great Northwest, living in Oregon and Washington. He currently lives all over the place, right, John?
Yeah.
But would you say your home is Florence, Oregon?
It is. That's our base.
That's your base. But he's been living in Santa Fe with us for a while now in our community. He has recently explored a new outdoor adventure, fishing on the rivers and the ocean of the Oregon coast. John believes in the law of attraction, the power of positive thinking, and living in the moment. Most people collect material items. John collects friends. He has friends from all walks of life. John has an easygoing, kind, friendly, and positive personality, which helps him make friends and helps him be a good storyteller. And this I can confirm, working with him at the Santa Fe Public Library. Please welcome our discussion with author and friend John Herbst about his fantasy writing and the Magical Forest series. Thank you so much, John, for being with me and doing this program with our community here. Far and wide. You've written a number of books, 3 about the character named Jake Meisner and his adventures, climbing, hitchhiking, the wilderness. So I imagine this Jake Meisner is based around your life and adventures.
Yes, Jake Meisner is a fictional character that parallels my life. And when I decided to write a book about my life and all my moves, I gave Jake that name because first of all, I like the name Jake, and second of all, Meisner is the name of Rudolph Meisner, who was one of 3 men that was a major influence in my life as I grew up in a small town in Greeley, Colorado. And he sort of took me under his wing when I was 11 years old until I was 16 and taught me a lot of important values that I still carry into my adult life. From 13 to 16 years old, we built a cabin together in the Rocky Mountains, and which is ideal for me because I practically lived outdoors as a kid, and I still do. And the Rocky Mountains are my sacred place. He also, though, taught me a good work ethic and building skills, which I continue to also use throughout my life.
Yeah. More recently published books, which is what we're here to talk about today, took a turn towards fantasy after your series about the adventures. How did you first begin to write fantasy?
Well, it's kind of funny because I didn't plan on writing fantasy. I planned on writing mostly mountaineering type books, and
Yeah.
after I did my first book. But in Florence, there was a group of us that would go to karaoke at a local restaurant, the Firehouse Restaurant and Bar, and there was probably about 20 of us that became really close, and we'd sing and dance. I didn't sing, but my wife did. Well, one night, our really close friends, about 5 women, were sitting at the table, and they already had my first 3 books. And 2 of them suggested that I write a fantasy book with them in it. And at first I laughed it off, and then I got to thinking, as a child, my best friend had a tree house in the backyard, and I envied him for that. We spent a lot of time in that tree house, and we daydreamed of being elves and swinging from trees to trees. We also loved Tarzan and Daniel Boone and Grizzly Adams and those types of stories. And then later in life, as an adult, I liked Chronicles of Narnia, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, those type of things, and particularly the elves. And so I thought, why not write a fantasy story and have all the characters in the book be represented by my friends in Florence. And at the time, I lived in Florence, which is the rainforest, old growth forest along the coastline.
Yeah.
So that's what got me into fantasy writing. I only intended on writing 1 book, and as I got near the end, I decided to write a trilogy.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's get into your magical forest series a little, or a lot. First things first, the main character's name is also John, but spelled Jon. Is this loosely based on you?
It is because I'm into energy work, and I was living in, near the forest already at that time. And I spent a lot of time at some various waterfalls. And the story takes place at Kentucky Falls, which is an old growth forest area. And so I thought, well, it's an area I already know. I'm going to start the book talking about camping in the forest and hiking and climbing trees and those type of things. And so it's easier to use me as the character as it was with my first 3 books.
Yeah.
Hopefully I know myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, that's what I was gonna ask about, the energy work. So, but I'll get more about your descriptive writing style. You describe all senses in great detail in your chapters. Reading The Magical Forest is honestly a lot like taking a nature bath or like forest bathing. For those who aren't familiar with forest bathing essentially means taking in all of one's senses, the forest atmosphere, conscious and contemplative practice of being immersed in sights, sounds, smells of the forest. That said, when writing, does it take you into nature? Does it take you back there? Do you begin to feel the same way you do when you're actually in nature, when you're writing the Magical Forest series?
It does. As a matter of fact, I get emotional when I'm actually writing about, because so far all of my books are about areas that I've actually either lived in or been in or spent, I have spent quite a bit of time in. So to me, when I'm in the forest or just nature in general, I like to keen my senses because I do a lot of things alone. but I also meditate, and meditating in nature for me is easier than sitting in a room and meditating. So when I'm writing, I find that I'm in the present moment.
Mhm.
I also believe in that, which we'll discuss later on about energy. So when I'm in the moment, I feel like I'm right there in the place that I'm writing about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was the same when I wrote about my mountaineering books as well. So,
Yeah. You went back on an adventure as you
yeah.
wrote. Yeah. I like that. So you already mentioned about how you got started with writing fantasy, that you decided and were encouraged by your friends from Florence to be characters in this book. Can you talk a little bit more about those friends that inspired the characters? Maybe do they look like the characters? Do they act like the characters? Yeah.
Okay. Well, friends are very important to me, friends and family. And I kind of use a model that a lot of people collect material things and I collect friends. And I've lived in 10 states in Puerto Rico and I have friends in all those places I still stay in contact with. So that being said, I thought I would honor my friends that asked me to write the fantasy, and they are some of the main characters in the story. But I took it farther than that, and all of the characters in the story are all people I know in Florence.
Mhm.
And what I did by honoring them was I stayed with their personalities and their qualities that they share with the society that they live in. And in some cases, maybe the job they have in the society as well. Even though this is a fantasy in another world, it's still a society. And so people have their parts in that society, their contributions. As far as the illustrations, the facial features are pretty close.
Yeah.
Obviously, the physical body is not, because it's a fantasy story.
Right.
So
Okay. Your friends aren't actually elves, but
I would like to think they are.
yeah, I do too. When did you start taking writing in general seriously and honing your craft?
Well, in college, I took Comp 1 through 4 in creative writing, and I loved it. And as a kid, I would look at encyclopedias and I would look up an animal and write things on the index cards. I liked writing, but I never really planned on being a writer or writing a book in particular. And my wife and I met on the Oregon coast, and we moved to Colorado. I introduced her to the area in the canyon that I grew up in. And after being there 9 days, we were caught in a 1,000-year flood.
Mhm.
And we had to be rescued, and FEMA moved us several times, which was stressful. We were thankful, but
Yeah.
stressful, and I needed a distraction. So I decided, well, I already did an outline for a potential book, which was Destination Unknown. I thought, well, now is the time to actually write the book.
Yeah.
It was only 15 miles away in the next town, and I needed to interview her to start the book because the book starts with her on the way to the hospital to have me in
Mhm.
1951. And so from 1951 to about 1955, I don't remember any of that. So that got me started on writing the book. And once I started, then I was dedicated to it and became serious and thought, okay, I'm going to finish this book and I'm going to keep going. And I have. I'm
Aw,
7th.
I'm so glad you did. And how do you write fantasy? Like, do you world build as you write, or do you outline the story and have the timeline already. How do you write?
I'm very detailed on outlining the book first.
Mhm.
And once I get it outlined and look through it, make changes if I need to, then I write the story from the creative side of my brain. Then I review it and go back and polish it up from the analytical side of my brain.
Mhm.
And then you would think that that would be enough and that'd make the story. But as I'm writing, especially from the creative side, I start eliminating a sentence and adding a different one. And so the story sometimes changes quite a bit from the outline, but the outline gives me
Yeah.
structure, gives me something to start with, the main characters and the location and those type of things.
Yeah.
Plot. Or
Yeah.
so.
And have you ever abandoned a piece of writing, left it unfinished?
I did. I was writing a sequel to the first book, or I had the outline done, put it that way,
Mhm.
and the preface. And then when my friends asked me to write the fantasy story, I put the other one on the shelf, so to speak.
Okay.
It's still there. I still think about it.
Yeah.
I'm right now writing a sequel to the first book, which includes Santa Fe in it.
Yeah.
And various areas in New Mexico. And then eventually I will go back and finish that book because it's an important book to me as well as the first one.
Yeah. Thank you. So I want to tell everyone who's watching that the Magical Forest series is beautifully illustrated throughout. It's worth flipping through just for the visual pleasure as well. So that said, what was it like finding and working with the artist who illustrated the Magical Forest?
Well, Ellen Huntingdon is the illustrationist. And
Yes.
her mother-in-law, Anna, is my wife's best friend. And we would spend holidays at her house. And this is in Florence again.
Mhm.
One day we were over there and Cindy, my wife, was looking at drawings on the wall, but various artwork. Some were painted, and asked Anna who did them, and she said it was her daughter-in-law, Ellen. While they were talking, I was looking at an ink drawing of a cabin that looked like, in my mind, could be in Fangorn Forest in the Lord of the Rings or
Mhm. Yeah.
And so a thought came to me, why don't I ask Ellen if she would be willing to do illustrations for the characters in my book? So I did ask her. At first, she laughed it off, thought I was, then I asked her a second time and she agreed to do it. Now, the funny side of that is she was nervous about doing a drawing of her mother-in-law.
Oh, yes.
Anna was fine with whatever she drew. And the fact she was doing the drawings according to my descriptions of the characters in the book. So if Anna didn't like it, I'm to blame. But
Yeah, see, exactly.
as far as I'm concerned, everything turned out perfect. And I love the fact that Ellen brought my characters to life through her drawing.
And since you mentioned The Hobbit, what fantasy authors would you say have influenced you the most?
Well, J.R.R. Tolkien is by far my favorite fantasy author. The others, I don't know if it's movies that I love that have influenced my writing as well. I don't know if the movies came originally from books or screenwriters, but whoever did it did a great job. And that would be Avatar, first two books of Chronicles of Narnia, which is Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, and Caspian. And I love the Johnny Depp version of Alice in Wonderland as well. So all
Yeah.
those have influenced me. I took kind of a little bit of each of that and blended
Mhm.
along with the personalities of my friends, and that's how I came up with the story. So they are by far my favorite authors as far as fantasy.
Yeah, you can definitely see it in the writing. There's a nod to Alice in Wonderland, the way he falls through a hole essentially to and in the magical forest, and definitely Avatar with the community that lives there. Yeah.
Even Louis L'Amour's book, The Haunted Mesa, which is my favorite of his books,
Mhm.
The person enters a portal into another world. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
John, do you wish you
I
could
wouldn't
find a
consider him
portal?
a fantasy author. He's
Uh-huh.
an author, but still, it influenced me in my fantasy writing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think most portals are, well, I guess it could be science fiction, but it's pretty fantastical. If you could find a portal to another world,
Pardon me?
do you wish you could discover a portal or a
Well,
hole?
I do. I mean, I'm adventurous. I think it would be very interesting. Actually, I would love to have the life that's in my trilogy.
I would too.
I did live in hippie communes,
Yeah,
70s, and so that was a little bit of an influence on the society and
yeah,
the force as well. It's a communal community. So
yeah.
there's lots of communal communities. They're not all hippie communities. But so
But the hippie ones are the best, right?
right.
What was your favorite hero or protagonist that you've written about, and what makes them special?
Actually, there are three heroes in the trilogy: Burnett, Ariana, and Laurel, which I consider them heroes because they were Ceylon, which is the other main character in the book besides John. They were beside her through thick and thin, through trial and error and all the things she went through in the story. They were always there for her. And in real life, same three she-elves in the story, in real life, they are my wife's best friends.
Mm-hmm.
So I honor them in that way as well, because they in the non-fantasy world, they are there for her at all times as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, two out of the three she-elves are true heroes, but I can't tell you why, because it gives away the story.
Yes, no spoilers. So, out of all the characters that are based on real friends and family and people, have they read the book? And if they have, what do they think of their character?
Most of them have read the book. There's three people that haven't yet, and one would be pretty surprised because she is one of the heroes, but she hasn't actually read the books. She doesn't even know she's one of the heroes. So.
Oh, she has to read it.
But I just informed, and that is Laurel, and Burnett in the story has read. She's the first to buy all of my books, and this is I've worked with for 9 years in Florence as a personal trainer, and so she was going to tell Linda that, do you know you're a hero, and maybe get her to read the story. But the majority of the people that's in the book have the books.
Yeah. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to ask how your career, or careers, I should say, impacts impacted your writing and as well as the fantasy writing. For example, you write about the elves and how they walk on the balls of their feet. And John smiles because this is something he would teach in personal training in the non-magical world. And of course, John fishes, hikes, and camps. So what skills do you yourself possess and that you feel a need to write about and it keeps you inspired?
Well, the reason I mentioned walking on the balls of the feet is because I do post-rehab work, and which tends to be mostly seniors, but sometimes as people come back from sports injuries. And I teach them to have proper gait, in other words, walk properly and not walk hard on their heels, which is stressful to the legs and the hips. And so I exaggerate a little bit with the elves of walking on the ball, but the point was to walk lightly on your feet and not walk stiff-legged and jar the body. So that is carried over from my personal training career. I do talk about muscles and being in shape to climb trees and to be fit in order to swing from tree to tree that the elves did. And therefore John ended up doing as well. All of that comes from the health industry that I've been part of for a long time. Other thing I did with the story is introduced energy work, and I did it through a fantasy story. So it's not textbook, and maybe people will get the message. And that's a quality I think I have because I try to practice what I preach.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the character John does energy work. And of course the elves do too, it seems. Or they just are energy.
Right.
Yeah.
They're already enlightened beings.
Right.
I'm not
right.
there.
Yeah. So let's see. I want to go stay on that page of your skills. Because you mentioned before we started how when you lived in a commune, a hippie commune, if you will, that you would use the skin of animals for clothing, right? And that's a big thing for elves.
Right. Well, I did take some of that lived in a hippie commune in northern Michigan. We homesteaded 60 acres. And we wore animal skins when we were on the commune. We wore regular clothing when we went into town and that type of thing. We lived off the land, basically. We raised our own crops, and some people hunted, some fished. I was not a hunter, I was a fisherman.
Okay.
So, and it was a communal society. We had one main house where we all ate our meals together, and it was also the bathhouse, but we all slept in yurts. And so that influenced the story too. I kind of I somewhat based the village on that, even though a village, I mean, there was 24 of us, so it was fairly large commune.
Yeah, I find that just fascinating. Thank you.
Well, in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a few communes at that time.
Yeah. You're now more of a solo adventurer, like John, although
I am. Yeah. I mean, I will hike with other people. I'm not anti-sociable, but being out in nature alone is my meditative time. And so I tend to do that more than be with someone else. Plus, I was a photographer for a lot of years, and I did that myself as well, because wildlife and landscape photographer wildlife photography, it doesn't help to have somebody else with you. You have to be quiet.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Also, for those of you watching, John has lived in, did you say 43 states?
No, I've lived in 10 states and Puerto
10
Rico.
states.
I've
Oh,
been
10
to
states.
43 states, but
You've been to 43. Well, John has been everywhere and has lived all over. And he's lived in Santa Fe in the 90s, had a gallery, and he's been spending time here this last year. Yeah, I just that also for an author adventurer, and that adds a lot to your storytelling abilities. Do you celebrate after you finish writing a chapter or a book? And if you celebrate, how do you do it?
I don't after a chapter, but after I finish a book, my wife and I go out to dinner somewhere nice and have some nice, we like craft beers. So
Yeah.
a good craft beer, and it may be a short-lived celebration, but it's a celebration.
Yeah, good for you.
My
You should
first
celebrate.
book was a little bit different because it was my first book, and some of my friends in Florence were in 3 chapters of the book. We celebrated at the firehouse and had a big party. But
Yeah.
then we just go out and have a nice dinner and
Yeah.
beers.
Good.
And I usually already have an outline for the next book. So
Yeah, you're ready to
move
go.
on.
Moving on, yes. Do you sometimes find it difficult to find books to read because you're looking for something specific that no one's written? And then do you realize that you need to write it?
Not really, I guess. I myself mostly read mountaineering books. I've read pretty much all the books on Everest, for instance.
Yeah.
John Krakauer is one of my favorite authors, and so I've read several of his books. And then I read a lot of energy books, Esther Hicks and Eckhart Tolle and those type of people. And I write completely different than what I read.
Yeah.
I mean, some of what I read is influenced in my writing, but
Sure.
so no.
John, your video has frozen up just a little bit, so if you can hear me, I'm just giving it a second. Yeah. Okay.
There you go. You're back.
Okay, good. We're back. So this is also exciting. What are you currently working on as far as your writing?
It goes to 2017. And so this book is a continuation of my moves and travels. Starts in 2017 and it will end the end of this year. And so this one's a little different because it's not just the moves. It's my wife and I for 2 years now have been pet sitting and house sitting and traveling. That's why we're in Santa Fe. And each place we stay, I'm writing the history of that area and incorporating that into the storyline. A brief history. And so that's what I'm writing now. So Santa Fe is in it, and then Tucson, and then back to Florence will be the end of the book.
That's so cool.
I'm contemplating continuing the saga of the magical forest and another new generation. So,
oh, that'd be so cool. Hope you
yeah.
do. So to wrap things up, before we see if anyone has other questions, I would love to know, what is the most magical experience you've had in a forest, or in general with healing and energy work?
Okay, this may be a little hard to believe. Those of you out there that know energy work, it may not be so hard to believe, but there's a stand of trees in the estuary off the Siuslaw River in Florence that I would go to every Sunday morning, and I would meditate. And I seem to have this energy connection with, there's like 3 trees in a triangle. They're aspen trees. And I'll go down there and I will lightly wrap my hands around the trunk of the tree and focus on the edge of the tree, not the tree itself, and let my mind go. And I can see the aura of the tree. And this particular time, I could see the aura coming off my hands and the tree, and it blended together, and my hands pretty much just blended right into the tree, which was pretty amazing. And I just stayed there, and I had a very light-headed feeling and kind of tingling. And just before that, my 2 favorite birds, coastal birds, well, larger birds, put it that way, are the great blue heron and the bald eagle. And occasionally I would see one or the other in the estuary. Well, that particular day, I heard the call of the bald eagle, and it broke my focus, and I let go of the tree, and I turned, and there were 3 bald eagles flying over my head. And believe it or not, there were 4 herons following right behind him. I just couldn't believe it. And then, so I just stood there in awe and watched them. And then as I walked out of the trail to another part of the estuary, there they were all sitting there on a nursing tree, which is a tree that's laying on the ground, and saplings grow out of it, all right there in a row. I couldn't believe it. So
that is truly magical.
Over it. Yeah. As I went home, I told Cindy, and I immediately wrote it down and figured I would put that in a story someplace.
Yeah.
Because it was magical to me. So
very magical. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Let's see. We have a question, and I think it's Angel. Have you ever been lost in a forest?
Well, I like J.R.'s token comment on that. Those who wander are not necessarily lost, right? I have wandered off the path and was lost for a little while, but never to the point where I had to be rescued. It is easy, though, in the forest to get lost, especially if you have no reference points. So what I learned from being a trail guide for many years was that every so often you stop and look behind you and look for reference points lower down, because you may not see in the forest, you're not going to see high places. And so you get turned around, you don't know where you're at. And if it's a cloudy day, you can't even go by the sun. So, but no, I've never been lost anywhere where I've had to be rescued. Not to that point.
And just because I already know this, you may not have been lost, but you found something lost, correct? Something quite large on top of a mountain. Maybe it wasn't lost, but an airplane in the forest.
Yes.
On a mountain.
Yeah, my best friend back home and his girlfriend at the time and I climbed an unnamed mountain, and on top of the mountain was a B-17 bomber that had crashed. And we did 2 years of research on the bomber, found the survivors. It crashed in 43, and we found it in 91. Well, we came across it. I mean, it had made front page news in 1943. But make long story short, we did the research. We found the survivors. In 1993, we managed to get them back to Colorado. They were in their 70s, and did a dedication ceremony and a memorial to those that didn't survive. Out of a crew of 10, 4 survived, which was pretty amazing. And that's probably one of the greatest things I think I was part of for mankind anyway. So, and that happens to be in my first book, the story.
Yeah, so cool. If there's any other questions or comments, feel free to write it in the chat Q&A, or you can raise your hand to be unmuted. While we see if anyone else has any other questions to ask, I'd like to share that we have the Magical Forest series on our shelves at the Santa Fe Public Library, so be sure to check it out there. John also publishes on a couple of different places online. Where can people find your books, John?
Okay, they sell on the Amazon bookstore, paperback and ebooks. And also I have an author's page and I have photographs on there as well. And it's amazon.com/author/John Herbst. And
Cool.
buy the books there as well, or browse books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then
don't
I
you write
sell
some
them.
short stories?
I'm currently writing short stories where you read one story at a time. It's not in a book form. It's a Kindle Vella is what it's called. Okay.
Right.
And you go on and you just read. It's meant for episodes. In other words, if you're writing a book, you read one chapter at a time. In my case, I'm writing short stories. It's called Feel Good Animal Stories, and it's stories of various animals I've either owned or have been pet sitting for, right up to the current time. So it starts back when I was a child, my first dog. Actually, it starts with a guinea pig. But I'm doing that as well. So.
Oh, awesome. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Lots of Amazon, Kindle, and library. You can find John's material. And there's another question here asking if you ever get writer's block. And I'll add to that, what do you do if you get writer's block? How do you shake yourself out of that?
I don't seem to get it. Maybe because I've been a storyteller all my life. I actually get too carried away. I have to rein myself back in because I have all these stories in my head. I'm ready for the next one and the next one. So I'm excited every morning. I write early in the morning. And when I was working full time, I'd get up at 4 in the morning to write. I'd write from 4 to 6 and go to work at 7. So at this point, I'm still excited to write. And so I don't seem to, I guess I'm lucky. I so far haven't had the writer's block.
Well, I guess with someone with so many adventures and stories of your own, it's a little easier to sit down and write.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, John. This has been really fun. I really appreciate you discussing your writing with me and your stories and sharing your friends with us through your fantasy writing. I encourage everyone to check out John's books. And I just thank you a million times, John, for doing this with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. For all those of you out there, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Read books, go on adventures, and read The Magical Forest. Take care.
Thank you.